Alright everyone, today we're talking about the UK Supreme Court. How the UK's highest court is about to decide what a woman is. I love that woman is in air quotes there, as if we don't already know what a woman is. It's just this new thing we've never heard of before, and we have to have a high court to decide for her. Absolutely mental. It says, a long-running row over how to define a woman is set to come to a head at the UK Supreme Court. Mental. Completely mental. Why are we doing this? I don't get it. It's amazing. It's amazing that we're here. I can't believe it. We're actually having to go to the High Courts to argue over what a woman is. And this judge and a bunch of juries are going to decide it for all of us. So this goes to show, in my mind, how effective trans ideology has been in the activism of the ideology. And their tactics have been throw public tantrums, public meltdowns, go on TV and scream about how they're being murdered every day, threaten violence and rape, threaten to get you sacked from the job, get you sacked from the job, harass, stalk, hunt you down, pile on you online. That's their tactic. Get you sacked from your job, threaten people around you, threaten your family, threaten your friends, threaten your colleagues, threaten them with violence, threaten them with rape, threaten them to have their job lost, threaten them to have their lives ruined. Billboards saying trans is sacred. So these are the tactics that have been so successful that we're now in the High Courts trying to decide what a woman is, because this group of religious nuts have caused such a ruckus in our society that we're having to turn everything upside down for them, when really we should be ignoring them. And let's be honest, their favourite claim is that they're being mass murdered every day. In England, or Scotland even, if they were being mass murdered every day, there'd be none of them left a decade ago. Anyway, I can't get my head around why we need a fucking court to decide what a woman is, and why we're not using the courts to decide what trans is, or what gender identity is, or what even gender means in legislative language. Because when we have these legal documents and these legal situations come about, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not trained in legal stuff, I can't read all that shit. But what I can see is that gender identity, sex and gender is all used interchangeably when it comes to legislation, and nobody's defining what this new word gender identity is, because that's not been around forever. That's a new thing and it's been slipped in everywhere. Nobody's defining what trans is, which is also a new thing that's been slipped in everywhere. Nobody has a definition for it, yet we're slipping it into all our laws and making laws around it that directly affect the rights of women and children, and by proxy everybody is affected by this, especially when it comes to so-called hate crime legislation that says trans or gender identity is a protected characteristic, but sex is not. So women are not protected, men are not protected, but if you say you're trans, you're in the protected category. Now, the protected category is supposed to be there as a goodwill gesture to minorities, just sort of like to virtue signal that we're going to be more concerned about you if a crime is committed against you than we would be against anyone else, and therefore we can attach aggravating factors to the crime when we get to court, which means that your crime is more of a crime than normal if you commit it against a minority. The idea was supposed to be that if it's like racially motivated crime, and it is proved to be a racially motivated crime, it could, I guess, add extra time or severity to the crime. I think it's bollock, honestly. I don't think anybody should be in these protected categories. I don't think there should be such a thing as a hate crime. If a burglary is committed against a white man versus a burglary committed against a brown man, why is the burglary against a brown man worse than the burglary against a white man? That is my thinking on it, right? I think get rid of all that shit. But the funny thing about protected categories, not that this video is about that, but it's worth mentioning, is that the way trans activists treat the protected category is, I'm protected from the law, therefore I don't have to obey the law, and you're not. I'm protected, you're not. And they outright say this. They outright say, I'm in a protected category and you're not, so I can commit crime against you and you can't do it back to me. That's not what the law was set up for, but that is how it's being used and perceived by these absolute lunatics. I don't know what's going to happen with the Supreme Court today. I think it's mind-blowing that there's a bunch of men, because from what I've read, it is a bunch of old men who are going to be deciding what a woman is for the entire country. I think that's mental. I don't think we should be doing it. But hey, this is where we're at. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know if the outcome will even have an effect on us or not. I don't know what the consequences of the outcome are going to be. But you know what? There might be a benefit to defining what a woman is in law. I hate saying it like that because a woman is a real thing. Why can't we put trans in air quotes? Because that's not a real thing. A woman is a real thing. I'm a woman. I was born female and I survived childhood and grew into a woman. A man can never, ever do that, no matter how many drugs he takes or how many surgeries he has. He can never grow into a woman. So why we're having to fight over that is ridiculous. We should really have a Supreme Court decide what trans is, or just get rid of it completely because it's nothing more than an ideology or a cult at this point. The benefit of defining what a woman is could come in with legislation. So you have these hate crime laws with all this fuzzy language because of gender identity and gender and trans is slipped in everywhere. And those words are not defined. The benefit could be that we can actually say in law that men are not women. That's if it was to go our way, right? If sanity wins today, we could actually in law say that men are not women and that women are adult female humans, that women are actually a thing. This is a real thing, being a woman. And if that is in law, then what I've been thinking about is, do these people who write this legal legislation, this mumbo jumbo that is the law, do they now have to go back on all the laws they've written around women's rights and around hate crimes and equality and things like that? Do they now have to go back on all those laws and rewrite it all because over the last decade they've slipped in words like gender identity and trans without defining those words and slipped it in everywhere as if that is what women's rights is and that is what hate crime is about, protecting this trans species, this new species of human that is some sort of sacred angel from the heaven down to earth that we must protect at all costs. Do you know what I mean? Am I making any sense? It's a little bit early in the morning. So the article says here, look, Sarah Dougherty writes, there are liars, there are damn liars, then there is the Scottish Government. Or at least that is the only conclusion to be reached after its submission to the Supreme Court published 2 days ago. Next Tuesday, that's today, the row over gender identity theory that has rumbled on for the best part of a decade will come to a head. 5 judges, led by Lord Reid, will consider the question brought by campaign group for Women Scotland. Is a person with full gender recognition certificate, GRC, which recognises that their gender is female or woman for the purposes of the Equality Act 2010. Wow. So I love For Women Scotland. I think they're brilliant and what they're doing for women up there is great. They've been around a while. You know, Scotland is in some trouble, so they need this, right? Women need this. So I love For Women Scotland, but that is one convoluted way of asking in law if a man is a woman too. You know what I mean? But I'm guessing they have to ask it like that to cover all the bases. You know what these institutions are like. They like to use convoluted riddle language where you say everything backwards and inside out to get to the point. It's just nothing straightforward. Nobody actually said, look, is a man a woman or not? Do you know what I mean? They're saying it in all this convoluted way and they have to play the game. But they have to ask it like that because some ideological wankers will claim that some men are women because they've got this certificate. And I've had it loads of times online, men saying to me,
I'm actually female, whether you like it or not, because I've got a certificate saying I'm female. I didn't get this certificate for nothing.
And I'm like, you got the certificate because you're a bunch of spoiled brats screaming at the system that you should be allowed to be recognised as something you're not. If you actually were female, you wouldn't need a fucking certificate in the first place. The article says, in its written argument, only published after policy collective MBM threatened to lodge an application with the Supreme Court seeking full disclosure, the Scottish Government insists that the term woman includes a person issued with a full GRC in the acquired gender of female. Now, first of all, I don't believe in gender. For ages and ages and ages, that word was used conflated with sex. It's the same word, right? For ages and ages and ages, it was just a polite word for sex, so that you don't have to say sex in public, or so that you don't confuse it with that sort of sex. Yeah? Not that anyone would, because I like to say biological sex so that people don't think I'm talking about the naughty. And, the idea that you have a person that is issued with a certificate that says they're female, but that person isn't a specific sex. Like, what? Why can't we just say in this a man issued with a certificate pretending to be female? Why is it in the acquired gender? Like, you don't acquire your sex. The gender they claim is an inner feeling, like it's your soul. Okay, if your gender is your soul, how do you acquire that through the government? If it's a feeling, how do you acquire that through the government? And why are we writing laws to protect that feeling or soul that we cannot prove exists? Gender is the important thing. Sex is just that pesky little thing that people keep banging on about that doesn't mean anything. Of course, the batshit crazy Scottish government does insist that if a man has a certificate, this somehow magically makes him a woman. Okay, fine. Is there a blood test for gender? Is there a blood test that will tell me what soul I've got? Don't be stupid. This certificate, you go online. I think at most you have to pay like 50 quid for it. Something like that. I think they've campaigned for it so that you don't have to pay because apparently trans people are poor. Which isn't true, by the way, because majority of the men who decide that they're women are quite well off, usually middle-aged and usually white men. Just saying. It's absolutely fucking mental. This should not be entertained in any way whatsoever. It's so stupid to me that this is where our tax money goes. Like, we've got so many things wrong with our country at the moment. Life is so hard for the average person. We can barely afford our rent. Even my friends who are doing like way better than us, they've got their shit together, right? They've got a proper job, a real career, a real house, family and everything. Their mortgages went up. They can't afford their mortgage. They're having to pull an extra grand out of their arse for this, an extra grand out of their arse for that. And even with their proper career, they can't just pull an extra 2 grand out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? Every month as well. So normal people are struggling. We're struggling. And the price of everything's gone up. The electric, the bills, the gas has gone up. You can't afford to do fucking nothing these days except for work and pay everyone for the bills. Maybe other people are doing better. I don't know. But I'm just saying, life is bloody hard and expensive. And I can't believe my tax money goes to this shit instead of, I don't know, at least sort out the potholes in the road. I don't know. Like, maybe pump some of that money into education. I don't know. Maybe pump some of that money into something useful. But instead, here we are, arguing about what a woman is. Now, I'm not blaming 4 Women Scotland for this, because they've done the right thing, in my opinion, to push this issue to the courts. I'm just upset that we've been forced into this situation, that we're in a situation where this has been so disruptive to our society that we now have to be in the Supreme Courts to define what a woman is. Insane. None of this idiot fucking ideology should have been entertained at all. From the very beginning, when men started saying, because this did start with men, when men started saying that they were women and that they've somehow transcended actual natural science and biology into the magical supernatural realm of magical human sex changes, they should have been laughed out the fucking room the minute this started. It should never have been entertained. I'm frustrated that it's been entertained because this has gone on in my lifetime and I've grown up into it, and here we are. Anyway, it says here, Equality Act fears dismissed. For all practical purposes, this means that women lose the protection based on their sex. The government's plans for self-ID set out in the bill meant that anyone over the age of 16 could change their legal sex simply by filling in a form. Campaigners and most Scottish Conservative MSPs argued that this would have a significant impact on women's rights as protected by the Equality Act. The Scottish Government brushed away their fears. Now, we see this time and time again, and it should be a complete no-brainer that this will have an impact on the whole of society if you legally allow people to so-called self-ID as whatever they want. whatever they want. Why has it got to be women? Why can't I self-ID as a robot? And why can't I self-ID as a cat? And get out of having to work and get fed every day. Do you know what I mean? Like, why is it always a woman people want to self-ID as, or the opposite sex? I mean, if you're trans and you believe that gender is the important thing and sex is not, sex is irrelevant, which is what they say to us, and you know there's an infinite number of genders, there's thousands and thousands of them, there's even Pepsi gender, Coca-Cola gender, circumgender, which is where you go round in a circle all day changing your genders depending on your mood. You know, it sounds like a teenager with too many things going on in their head. So, you know, if you can self-ID as anything with these genders, why has it got to be a woman? Why have all these men got to self-ID as a woman? Why can't a middle-aged, well-off white man has to identify as a woman? Why can't he identify as a space penguin? We should entertain that in law if we're going to entertain them pretending to be women, because it's just as stupid. I've always thought it's completely bonkers to allow fiction into legislation and into law. We should not be writing what is called legal fiction. Absolutely mental. We should, when it comes to the law, we should stick to reality and what is true, rather than writing in these fictional, like, fucking lies. You're just writing in lies into the law and saying everybody has to go along with this lie now. Why? Why do I have to go along with it? I don't have to go along with it. You don't have to go along with it. Let's not go along with it. Oh, hang on a minute. That could be a hate crime. Ooh, awkward. Oh, fuck's sake. I'm not really surprised at all that the Scottish Government brushed this concern off. Like, all of our governments in the UK seem to be in with the idea that men who pretend to be women should be allowed to do whatever they want, no matter who it affects. And that is why we have actual rapists and PDF files going to the women's prison. Because even though they're rapists, which means they're a danger to women, like the top tier danger, the number one danger to women, their needs and their wants and their desires still matter more than that of the women in prison. So we see that dynamic play out time and time again in society. Like, I saw an article the other day about how a man is allowed into the changing room of little girls and he can't do anything about it now, whereas 10 years ago you could go, fuck off you pervert, get out of here, and everyone would be on your side. Now you can't say anything, because what if that man is pretending to be a woman? If you say anything to a man pretending to be a woman, are you now committing a hate crime? It's a bit fucking mad. And people will argue that that's very unlikely to happen. That's not happening. And if it is, it's few and far between. And if it is, well, you know, you should teach your little girls not to be perverts and look at a trans woman's genitals. Maybe you should teach your little girl to keep her fucking eyes to herself. And that is stuff that people have actually said. And I'm not just talking about random strangers on the internet. I'm talking about celebrities, influencers, people who have made their name around their activism will say shit like this. And that is showing us where the mindset of this ideology is. Just saying. Shona Robison, on Tuesday, December 22, 2022, as the bill was about to pass, she stated in Parliament, "I'm grateful for the opportunity to put on record once again that, as I have said so many times, the exceptions in the Equality Act 2010 remain, and trans women can be excluded from those women-only spaces if it is proportionate and in line with the guidance and with the provisions that are contained in the 2010 Act." I cannot be any clearer than that. Well, love, you can be a bit clearer than that, can't you? Because what's all this trans woman here? You ain't defined that in law. That could mean anything. And why is it that men are excluded from women's spaces, but this thing called a trans woman can only be excluded from the spaces if it is proportionate and in line with guidance? What does that mean? Explain yourself. This isn't clear. This is mumbo jumbo. Why not just write man? That's what it is. And we all know what a woman is, yeah? And we're here having a Supreme Court debate and define it for her. Yet no one has defined trans or trans woman or trans man or gender identity. And here we are giving this mysterious new thing that nobody knows what it is, called a trans woman, these rights over and above women and girls. In fact, actively taking away rights from women and girls, like directly competing. And this thing has no legal definition. We're having to fight against something that doesn't even exist. Does anyone else think this is batshit? You know, I think all men should be excluded from women's spaces under all circumstances. There shouldn't be an exception. If it's proportionate and in line with guidance, what the fuck is that? How can this exception be proportionate? What if the man's wielding a knife? Are we allowed to tell him he's not allowed in? If he's got his cock out, are we allowed to tell him he's not allowed in? I mean, what's the guidance here? What does the guideline say? I've never seen the guidance. This is incredible that the law is bending over backwards for a few deranged arseholes. It says here, it is impossible to predict which way the Supreme Court will fall on whether the legal definition of a woman includes men with a GRC. If For Women Scotland prevails, then the Equality Act will be clear. Women are defined by their sex and not a certificate. If the judges uphold the Scottish Government's view, then the battle will rumble on. So that's really important, you know, being a woman isn't about having a certificate. My haircut doesn't make me a woman. Do you know what I mean? What makeup I put on, whether I wear makeup or not, doesn't make me a woman. A certificate doesn't make me a woman. The fact that I am an adult female human is what makes me a woman. And that is it. That's it. Honestly, get rid of the fucking certificates. Get rid of them. Why can't I have a certificate to say I'm a penguin? Why can't I have a certificate to say I'm a baby and I shouldn't have to work? Why can't I have a certificate to say anything I want? Get rid of the certificates. Whoever came up with the idea that some men should be given a certificate to say that they're women is an actual gherkin. Like a real one. A real human gherkin. That's what you are. You're an idiot. You're a fucking monster. You're a monster. I can't get my head around it. I can't get my head around why this ever came up, that we should have certificates recognised in law to say that some men are women. If those men really were women, they wouldn't need a certificate. You know what blows my mind is it has all come into law without consulting anyone. Like, even women were never asked about this. Women were never asked if they're okay with it. Women were never asked if they want it. We never got a vote. We never got a say in this. This has just all been decided without us. And once again, in the Supreme Court today, it is all being decided without us. Today, a bunch of old men are going to decide what a woman is for the entire country. Amazing.
Early in the morning, as the sun comes up, I just wanna have a cup. There's one drink, that's the one for me. Won't you please make me a cup of tea?